701 here, and today I'm going to be asking, what season of classic Doctor Who do you think is the most overrated? Because I think everybody has one. Everybody has that one season they're just like, I don't get it. I don't get it. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad season. And you yourself, your particular season, you might not think it's a bad season. You just don't quite get what all the hype's about. You always hear about it. And I know you have one. I guarantee you, when you saw the title of this video, or when you clicked on this video, you had that season that popped into your head immediately. That one season, you're like, that one. It's that one. I want to know what yours is, and we're going to talk about mine. Mine is a season I like, but it's a season that gets way too much praise. Oftentimes, this particular Doctor, it's heralded as their best season. I hear that all the time. Oh, it's their best season. It's their strongest season. And it's my least favorite season by them. Easily. Even though it's one of my favorite Doctors. Even though it is a good season, I prefer their other seasons. This one just... The stories in it, to me, either tend to plod, what I've seen of it, or they're highly overrated. And the season I'm going to be talking about today is Season 5, with the second Doctor, Patrick Troughton. I love Patrick Troughton. He is one of my favorite Doctors, a top-tier Doctor for me. But people always seem to tell me, well, you know, Patrick Troughton's best season is Season 5. And I'm like, well, you know, no, it isn't. For me, it's really hard to pick between Seasons 4 and 6. I think 4 is my favorite story-wise. I mean, it suffers because so much of it is missing. Thank goodness we have the animations to kind of help rebuild that. But there's something about seeing Troughton in live action that's so amazing. But even Season 6, which even though it's his most complete, is oftentimes considered his weakest, I prefer over Season 5. It has these standout stories like, like the War Games. I love the War Games. Can it be a little repetitive? Possibly. They do get captured a lot. But I love it. I think it fills out its 10 parts really well. I think it's very epic for what it is. And the final episode is one of the greatest episodes in all of Doctor Who. It has the invasion. I love the invasion. I think the only reason the invasion is not held maybe perhaps in quite as high regard as Tomb is because Tomb is complete. And Invasion is missing a couple episodes. I mean, it's an 8-parter. But it's only missing 2 episodes. But I think if it was complete, it would be heralded as Troughton's best Cyberman story. Because I do think, objectively, it is his best Cyberman story. It's not my favorite, but I think it's objectively the best. It has such a good human villain in it in Tobias Vaughn. He is so good in that role. And then the Cybermen themselves, I can't talk, don't even show up until halfway through the story, at the end of Part 4. The story at 8 parts is paced very well, very well. Again, we have... the Brigadier coming back, and we have the first story that's actually got Unit proper in it. That's nice. We have our first story with Benton. I always enjoy the second Doctor with the Brigadier. Something about them. I as much as I like 3 with the Brigadier, I really love 2 with the Brigadier. They just seem to get on so well. And then it has some of the most iconic imagery of the Cybermen in the show's history, with them coming out of the sewers, with them walking around the city, which... the Series 8 2-parter tried to pay tribute to, and it still doesn't look as good. But then you have Seeds of Death, which is way better than the Ice Warriors. The Ice Warriors, we'll get to that, but it plods. I feel like Seeds of Death is a much tighter story. There's more going on in it. I'm more engaged with it. It's definitely a better outing for the Cybermen, personally. Yeah, the Dominators isn't great. I'll admit that. The Dominators is not good. It could be Troughton's weakest story. I'll admit that. I find the Crotons underrated. I like the Crotons. I've only watched it once, but I like the Crotons. Plus, it has one of my favorite Doctor Who moments when the Doctor and Zoe are talking. What's this doing? Come back. No, wait. Go away. When he keeps bringing her back, shooing her forward. No, wait. I've got it. She's over there. Press the button. I love that moment. It's such a, not necessarily a father-daughter moment, but like a kooky old uncle moment, like something your uncle would do. I adore that. That's fantastic. I really do. They have a nice little bond, the second Doctor and Zoe. And of course it has the Mind Robber in it. And I love the Mind Robber. I love when Doctor Who does these fantasy-style stories, like we also get it with the Celestial Toy Maker. And there's another one I'm thinking of. even a little to an extent with the Five Doctors, a little. If there's another story, Ghostlight kind of has that surrealness going on to it. There's another story that's slipping out of my head. Can You Hear Me, I think, kind of has that going on in it a little bit. But I love the total fantasy element of the Mind Robber. It's such a good story. They're really just in a different universe, and I want Doctor Who to do that more because you can kind of do your own thing with that. Plus, the minimalist approach it takes to that story, which, of course, due to their budget, they kind of have to, but it works. They make that work. I'm never sitting here going, man, the budget on this sucks. I am just enthralled with what's going on in the screen in the Mind Robber. So it has so many stories I am just entrenched with. Whereas Season 5 has, let's go through the list of Season 5. Tomb of the Cybermen, which is good. Is good. Great story, some iconic imagery, some good characters, some not so good characters. And it's complete. I always love some complete Troughton. But it's overrated. I do think this story is overrated. I don't think it holds a candle to the Invasion story-wise. I just don't. Then we have Abominable Snowmen, which I've read the story and it's really good. But I would love to see the episode. We have the animation coming, but it's done in that Fury from the Deep animation that I don't really care for, that always puts me off. At least we're supposed to have an animation coming. I wonder. But the story I like, the novel. I enjoyed the novel of it. The Ice Warriors, as I mentioned before, plods. It drags. It's not a bad story. It just should have been a 4-parter. I like the Doctor in it. I like Jamie in it. I don't really care for Victoria. Maybe that's another problem I have with Season 5 is I'm not a big Victoria fan. I don't really care for Victoria very much. Which, to be fair, it's built into her character story. She's not there by choice. She just kind of ends up there because her dad dies. So she's not really cut out to be a companion. And she knows this. That's why she leaves. But I've never really been a big Victoria fan. I do like the guy who's playing the leader of the organization, the one with the cane. I like him a lot. He's acted really well. But it just drags to me. The animation's not bad for the animated episodes, but it just plods along. I mean, is anyone here really going to defend the Ice Warriors? Let's be honest. I mean, how many of you prefer the Ice Warriors over the Seeds of Death? I think most people, not everybody, but I think most people. I think when I actually did the face-off on them, I think the Seeds of Death won by a strong margin, like a 2-1 margin. It was a really strong margin with the Seeds of Death won that one. Next is Enemy of the World, which has been very much reassessed since it was found. And it's a good story. Troughton is phenomenal in it. Yeah, I mean, he's basically playing 4 parts in a way. He's playing the Doctor. He's playing, Salamander? Let's call him, I can't remember, Salamander. But then he's also playing the Doctor pretending to be Salamander, and Salamander pretending to be the Doctor. And Troughton playing Salamander is different from Troughton playing the Doctor pretending to be Salamander. There's little nuanced differences that I really like. So it really is a chance for Troughton to really flex his acting muscles. And I like that. And the story is interesting. I like what's going on in it, but I never quite connect with it the way some people do. It's another one I personally find overrated. Next on the list is Web of Fear, which I find this one overrated as well. I don't quite know why, because it's got a lot going on in it I like. It's mostly complete. The animation for episode 3 is not great, but I can tolerate it. We have the introduction of Lethbridge Stewart, who is a colonel at the time. That's great. I love how good the tunnels look for the subways. It's hard to believe that's a set. That's done really well. The story being in black and white really helps it here. I love the atmosphere of the story, the tension in the story, the claustrophobic nature of the story. All of that ticks my boxes. I like that. Troughton is good in it. It's nice to see Professor Trevor's back. I really like Staff a lot, the character they call Staff. I really enjoy him as a character a lot. He's kind of the gruff sergeant. It's just like, all right, let's get it done, men. I like him. Maybe that's a little problem I have with the story. It's kind of how the story ends around that. I have issues with. And the Great Intelligence is used to good effect. I like the design of the Yeti in this story better. And I like anytime the phone is going out, like the Great Intelligence. Just for some reason, at the end of the day, this isn't one of my favorite Troughton stories. And I can't quite pin down why, because I like all of the things I just described about the story. But for some reason, I still find it overrated. I still don't find it one of, like, Troughton's just top stories. Fury from the Deep, it's the animation. It's purely the animation here. If Fury from the Deep existed, complete or mostly complete, it would probably be one of my favorite Troughton stories. Because the story itself, I love. I love the horror of it. I love the incidental music in it. I like the performances from what I can pick up from the sound and the audio and the reconstruction, because I have seen the reconstruction. And the little bit of surviving footage, it looks utterly terrifying and very well directed. And I love the concept of the story, just sentient seaweed that can possess people. I love that. Doctor Who horror done right. Years before the Hinchcliffe era. But the animation for it is garbage. It's this Scooby-Doo, cheesy, cartoony. I really wish they'd had the Sun and Moon from the Macroterra. Because if this had been done more in a Macroterra style, it would have been phenomenal. But as it is, they make the rooms too big in the animation, which totally erases the claustrophobic nature of the story. Because the story is a lot like Web of Fear, where it's supposed to be atmospheric and tense and claustrophobic and scary, and it isn't, because the animation utterly ruins that. And to prove that, all you have to do is watch the surviving scene of episode 2 when Laurel and Hardy are gassing the doctor's wife, because that footage survives, and then turn around and watch the animated version of it. The animated version looks like a parody. It's so bad. So that suffers from that. And then Wheel in Space I have never seen, but I've also heard it plods, and that it's a bit dull, and that it's too long, and that it's Troughton's weakest Cyberman story. I have heard many of those things. Whereas Season 4, despite so much of it being missing due to the animations, it has cracking stories. It has Power of the Daleks, which I love. I love Power of the Daleks. Even if the animation is not as good as some of the other animations, I love the story. It's one of the Daleks' best story. The fact that it is my second favorite Dalek story, even trumping out Genesis, those two are so close, despite being completely animated, is a testament to how good the story is. Because nobody does Daleks like David Whittaker can do Daleks. He understands that the Daleks are geniuses. They are highly intelligent and highly manipulative, and they will use you and suck up to you and do whatever they have to do until you are no longer useful to them, and then like a broken tool, they'll toss you away. Because all they care about is themselves. And he understands just how far a Dalek will go to reach their goals, and I love that. Plus the Dalek voices in Power of the Daleks are just so good. And the animation of the Daleks themselves is so good. I love Power of the Daleks. And then we also have Evil of the Daleks. Again, David Whittaker being amazing. I like Evil of the Daleks. Some people might say it's an episode too long, but I enjoy it. It takes place pretty much in 3 different settings. You have the beginning, like episode 1 in the present, 1966, right after the Faceless Ones. Then you have a large chunk of the story there in 1866 in the mansion house, the Victorian mansion house. And then you have the last couple episodes that take place on Skaro. And the animation for it is also very good. Very good. Better than Powers, not quite as good as Macros, but very, very good. The surviving episode 2 is absolutely astounding, and I hope one day we can find at least one more episode of Evil, because I love the surviving episode 2. Troughton is just on fire in that scene when he realizes the Daleks are the ones responsible for it, and as he's slowly piecing it together in his head, static. Did you say static? I love how you just see the dots connecting in his face. The animation can't quite capture that, but it's still really good. So you have these 2 cracking Dalek stories. You have the Moon Base, which is my personal favorite Cyberman story of Troughton's. And my favorite performance of Troughton's is in the Moon Base. I absolutely love him in that story. The animation for episodes 1 and 3 is also very good, but man, the surviving footage is so good. I love the Moon Base. I don't really care for the Cybermen's design in it, but man, those scenes when they're walking around on the moon, outside, in the animated versions and the surviving footage, just, and the incidental music that's playing when they're doing it, I absolutely Love that. And Troughton just has some great lines in this story. I adore it. Plus, I like Ben and Polly in this story. Jamie's kind of sidelined for most of it. I like how Polly comes up with the idea of using the spray stuff. That is glorious. Macroterra, I like. I know it's kind of a B story, but this is the opposite of Fury from the Deep. The animation totally makes this one of my favorite Troughton stories. The animation is so good. I love the liberty it takes. Would I have liked the rough and tumble scene? Yes, and it's sad that got cut. But the rest of it's phenomenal. I love how they just, instead of sticking to the actual like camera script and stuff, they did their own thing with it. They modernized it. The incidental music fits pretty decently. Not 100%, but it's still good incidental music. But the redesign of the Macra is truly terrifying. There are scenes when you see them walking in the moonlight, or you just see their eyes before they walk out. That is phenomenal. Plus, more than any other story, I think this one really makes a difference between whether you watch it in black and white or color. They're both equally phenomenal, but I get two different emotional reactions and responses when I watch this, depending on whether I'm watching the black and white version or the color version or even the reconstruction. And I love all three versions. I have three versions of this story that I just adore. So for me, the Macroterra is one of my favorite Troughton stories because of all of that. And then we have the Faceless one, which is good. It's good. It's not the best, but it's good. Now, I've never seen Underwater Menace because I refuse to buy the DVD because I've heard that reconstruction's garbage. I know it's not one of the best, but I think it's one of those, if I just approach it like it's going to be silly fun, like Unicorn and the Wasp or Crimson Horror, I'll probably enjoy it. And then, I think I've talked about all of them in there now. Troughton and Highlanders. I've read the book for Highlanders and actually really enjoyed it. It has that really funny scene of Troughton when he's tricking the guy into letting him out of the room. Bangs his head on a desk. Do you suffer from headaches? I love that. That's funny. So, as you can see, there are seasons 4 and 6 just have these episodes that are just crackers for me. I love them. They are firecrackers. I get excited for them. Whereas season 5 doesn't really have a single story that just lights up for me. It has good ones, but most of the ones people rave about, Tomb of the Cybermen, Enemy of the World, Web of Fear, Fury from the Deep, I find overrated, or in the case of Fury from the Deep, the animation ruins it. But even the other three I find overrated. I'm still not quite sure for Web. So for me, it's season 5. I just don't get it. It's my least favorite Troughton season by a fair margin. I'd say 4 is my favorite, then 6, and then a little ways down 5. Now, to be clear, I still like season 5. It's Troughton. I love Troughton. And it's Jamie, and Jamie's one of my favorite companions, too. So I still enjoy it. I still go back and rewatch stuff from it. But it's, to me, it's nowhere near the hype people get it when they just praise it as Troughton's best season. I'm always like, different strokes and all that. But it's not for me. So I'd like to know what you think of the video, and what season in classic Doctor Who do you think is the most overrated season for you personally? Other things to do while I have you here, go ahead and click the like button, click the subscribe button, and the bell for notifications. That helps me out. I also have a Patreon. If you like what I do and would like to support what I do, there's a link to that down in the description below. I want to give a shout out to two of my top tier patrons, Stephen Crane and the Fifth Doctor. I appreciate their continued support and the support of all of my patrons. I also have a P.O. box if there's anything you would like to send me, Doctor Who related or otherwise. That's down there as well, as is a link to my Amazon wish list, which I update regularly. So check that out if you haven't in a minute. Most importantly, though, thank you for watching.